Hey everybody, welcome to the garage. Today we're going back in time to cruise through the golden age of automobiles, the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We're talking about the cars that weren't just transportation, they were statements. You know, the kind of cars that made heads turn and your heart race. We're going to dive deep into the stories behind these beauties, the growl of their engines and what made them legends. Buckle up because we're about to take a trip down memory lane with some of the coolest cars ever built. Get ready to hear about roaring V8s, sleek designs, and the feeling of cruising down the open road with the wind in your hair. We're talking about the cars that defined generations and still get enthusiasts fired up today. So, let's get this show on the road. First up, we've got a car that's basically automotive art, the Jaguar E-Type. Now, I'm a sucker for a car with curves, and this baby, oh boy, she's got curves in all the right places. Enzo Ferrari himself even called it the most beautiful car ever made. I mean, can you argue with that? Picture this, it's 1961, the year Kennedy took office, and this car rolls onto the scene at the Geneva Motor Show. People literally stopped and stared. It was like the automotive equivalent of Brigitte Bardot walking down the street. The long hood, those voluptuous fenders, and that low-slung profile, it screamed speed and sophistication all in one package. The E-Type wasn't just about looks though. Under the hood, you had a powerful six-cylinder engine that could really move. This thing could go from 0 to 60 in about 7 seconds, which was seriously fast for its time. And that sound? Oh man, that classic Jaguar growl was like music to a car lover's ears. But you know, the E-Type was more than just a pretty face and a powerful engine. It was a symbol of the swinging 60s, of a world embracing new ideas and pushing boundaries. This car was all about freedom, about the open road, and about living life to the fullest. Think about it. Driving down the California coast with the top down, the sun on your face, and the wind in your hair. That's the E-Type experience, my friends. It's no wonder this car remains a legend to this day. It's the kind of car that gets passed down from generation to generation, a true automotive icon. Alright folks, we're moving from British elegance to pure American muscle with the 1970 Chevelle SS. This car was a beast on wheels, a true icon of the muscle car era. It was all about power, performance, and that unmistakable American swagger. Now the Chevelle was already a good-looking car, but the SS package? That took it to a whole other level. We're talking about a mean-looking machine with a big block V8 under the hood. You could get this thing with a 396, A454, even a monstrous 454 LS6 that cranked out over 450 horsepower. Let me tell you, when you put your foot down in one of these babies, you felt it in your soul. The roar of that engine, the screech of the tires, and the feeling of being pushed back in your seat, it was exhilarating. The Chevelle SS was the king of the drag strip back in the day. Guys would line these things up at the quarter mile and let it rip. The smell of burning rubber, the sound of those engines screaming, it was a true spectacle. And you know what? The Chevelle SS wasn't just about raw power. It handled surprisingly well for a muscle car. Chevy really got the suspension right on this one. But more than anything, the Chevelle SS was a symbol of American cool. It was the car every kid dreamed of owning, the one you'd see cruising down Main Street on a Friday night. Now, we're jumping ahead to the 1980s, a time of big hair, shoulder pads, and of course, some truly iconic cars. And when it comes to 80s supercars, the Ferrari Testarossa reigns supreme. This car was pure extravagance, a rolling symbol of the decade's go-for-it attitude. Think about it, Miami Vice, Scarface, Magnum, PI, the Testarossa was everywhere. This car was a star in its own right, gracing posters on bedroom walls and appearing in music videos. It was the ultimate symbol of success, of living the high life. But the Testarossa wasn't just a pretty face. Underneath that sleek, wedge-shaped bodywork beat the heart of a Ferrari, a 4.9-liter flat 12 engine that sounded like a chorus of angels singing at the red line. And those side strakes? Those weren't just for show, folks. They channeled air to cool the engine and gave the car its distinctive look. This thing was fast, too. We're talking 0 to 60 in just over 5 seconds, and a top speed of almost 190 miles per hour. In the 80s, that was seriously moving, and it put the Testarossa in a league of its own. But you know, the Testarossa was more than just a car. It was a statement. It said, "I've arrived." It was the kind of car that turned heads wherever it went, and it still does today. Okay folks, let's get back to that gorgeous E-Type for a minute. I want to delve a little deeper into what made this car so special, beyond its undeniable good looks, because believe me, there's a lot more to this car than meets the eye. First off, let's talk about that engine. Now, the E-Type was originally launched with a 3.8-liter inline-six, which at the time was a pretty advanced piece of engineering. It had dual overhead camshafts and produced around 265 horsepower, which was pretty potent for the early 60s. But what really set this engine apart was its sound. It had this throaty, almost musical growl that sent shivers down your spine every time you fired it up. And it only got better as you climbed through the revs. It was addictive, pure and simple. Now, the E-Type wasn't just about straight-line speed, although it could certainly move when it wanted to. It was also a joy to drive on winding roads. The handling was superb for its time, thanks in part to its independent rear suspension, a pretty advanced feature back then. But you know, one of the things I love most about the E-Type is its timeless design. It's one of those cars that looks as good today as it did back in 1961. Those classic lines, the long hood, the short rear deck, it's the perfect example of form following function. And you know what? The E-Type's influence on car design is still felt today. You can see its DNA in so many modern sports cars. It's a true icon, a car that will forever be remembered as one of the greatest ever built. Alright, let's get back to that American muscle car, the 1970 Chevelle SS. This car was a legend on the drag strip, and for good reason. It was built for speed, pure and simple. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Chevelle SS came with a variety of engine options, but the real gem was that 454 LS6 V8. This thing was a monster, cranking out 450 horsepower and a stump-pulling 500 pound-feet of torque. In the right hands, a Chevelle SS with the LS6 could rocket from 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds and blast through the quarter mile in the low 13-second range. That was seriously quick for the time, especially for a car that you could buy right off the showroom floor. But the Chevelle SS wasn't just about brute force. It also had a certain swagger, a presence that commanded respect wherever it went. It was the kind of car that made you feel like you could take on the world. And you know what? The Chevelle SS wasn't just a car for gearheads, it was a cultural phenomenon. It appeared in countless movies, TV shows, and songs. It was the car every kid dreamed of owning, a symbol of freedom and rebellion. Let's get back to that Italian stallion, the 1985 Ferrari Testarossa. This car was pure 80s excess, and I mean that in the best way possible. It was loud, it was brash, and it was absolutely unforgettable. Now the Testarossa was a departure from previous Ferrari designs. It was much more angular and aggressive with those iconic side strakes that dominated its profile. Some people loved them, some people hated them, but one thing's for sure, they made the Testarossa stand out from the crowd. But those strakes weren't just for show. They served a functional purpose, channeling air to the side-mounted radiators that cooled the Testarossa's potent flat 12 engine. And speaking of that engine, it was a masterpiece. It displaced 4.9 liters, had 4 valves per cylinder, and produced a glorious 385 horsepower. But it wasn't just about the numbers. This engine sang a song unlike any other, a high-pitched wail that sent shivers down your spine every time you hit the gas. And when you did hit the gas, the Testarossa responded with a ferocity that few cars could match. It could rocket from 0 to 60 in just over 5 seconds and reach a top speed of almost 190 miles per hour. But you know, the Testarossa wasn't just about performance. It was about making a statement. It was about arriving in style, about turning heads, and about living life to the fullest. Well folks, there you have it. A trip through time with some of the coolest cars ever built. These machines weren't just transportation, they were symbols of their eras, capturing the spirit of their times and leaving an enduring legacy on automotive history. From the sleek elegance of the Jaguar E-Type to the raw power of the Chevrolet Chevelle SS and the over-the-top extravagance of the Ferrari Testarossa, these cars represent the very best of their respective decades. They continue to inspire and excite enthusiasts today, and their stories are a testament to the power and artistry of automotive design. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more classic car content, and let me know in the comments which one of these beauties you'd most like to take for a spin. Until next time, keep those engines revving.